One of the most critical things you can do to get your 2024 plan on track is to listen to your team. Their perception is their reality. So what we want to do is give you guys the opportunity to get some feedback for your team. This is included in our insurance agency strategic planning workbook. Get ready for 2024. But we are going to go through some tips of what to ask, what to look for. And this is an actual video that's included with the workbook that you're going to be listening to or watching on YouTube. So you can go ahead and take a listen. And if it gets you jacked up, think about buying our workbook.
Hi, everybody. It is Therese, Potter, and Steven, and we are here to talk to you about team feedback for your 2024 strategic planning workbook. So we're going to start just by going through the workbook that you're looking at, and then we will review the workbook that you will, or the questions that you will give your team. So as an overview, we're just going to start gathering your team's feedback. Now, why is feedback important, Steven?
Because what we see at a leadership level may not be what's actually happening. And we really need to figure out where our team's at, where their feelings are, what their pain points and struggles are, and what they think that they're doing well, so that we can then compare and contrast against what our expectations are and where we thought that they were and what we think that their strengths and weaknesses are.
Exactly. So we want to basically set up our plan with telling them about what our plan is and where we in our minds are headed for our 2024 strategic plan. We want to receive their feedback, and we are going to send them a PDF to get their feedback. We want them to be as honest as possible. We want to make sure that we give them a deadline for that plan. Then we want to review the feedback and analyze the information. So this process is going to take some time because you have to put into it, okay, I have to, schedule a meeting to tell them. I have to send it to them. I have to give them time to complete it. Then I have to review the feedback and analyze the feedback. So you need to make sure that you have enough time to do all of those things to get that feedback from your staff, and make sure that you're honest about wanting their feedback. So like we said, you want to give a deadline. You want to send the workbook to them after the meeting that you have with them. And there is a video in our agency school that you can show them. You want to check that out too to decide whether or not you want to show them that. Now, how not to get the party started. What are the things you should definitely not do? One of them is email them the workbook without any communication or without much communication. That's why you want to meet with them first. So don't get gung-ho. Oh, let me email this to them. No, slow down. Make sure you explain. And it'd be great for you to have a meeting with them, for them to understand you're working on your 2024 strategic plan. You want to include them in the plan. So this is what you need. If you email them that 20-page PDF, just be like, hey, fill this out. That's not going to work. It's going to backfire. So you need to be honest. You need to make sure you're giving them a deadline. Remember, it is 20 pages long. So there's a lot of feedback there. You need to be considerate of their time and how long it's going to take them to fill it out. And let them know that only the ideas you like will make the cut. So you as the leader have to decide what ideas you're going to use and what you're not. But you cannot say to them too, I'm not going to use your ideas, because then they're not even going to give them to you. So you need to be very clear on that.
I think we also need to we keep saying 20 pages and it sounds overwhelming, but it's just a lot of it's just a lot of blank space too. We would have just listed the questions, it'd be 2 pages or a page and a half, but there's lots of space for feedback and adding things. So I think that what we need to remind them too is not to get overwhelmed with it. Just take it a question at a time and a page at a time. And if they're not understanding or they have a question, to please reach back out, right? We want clarity as kind of the...
Well, and just like we work with it, we say to our customers, if they've got an increase in price, you want to give them the small amount, like the monthly amount, like $16. And if they've got, if they're getting money back, you want to give them a higher number. Don't tell the team, okay, I'm going to send you a 20-page PDF to fill out. Don't say that. I was just warning you that it is 20 pages because It may look like it's huge and you're going to need to give them time. And I would consider reading over it at least so you know what the questions are that are being asked. So when they do come to you and ask questions, you do know what those questions are. Now, the next step is how to review your team's feedback. The first thing is to keep the answers confidential. And this doesn't mean just not talking about them. It means not leaving it up on your monitor where other people can read them, not leaving them on the copier you print it out and the printer is, out where everybody can see it. Everybody else gets to see the responses. Try to respect your staff and respect their feedback and make sure that that feedback is confidential and that only you are reading it. Like Stephen said, you want to avoid reacting to the responses you read. You want to respond in your plan instead. So you don't want to just react and, go right to the person and say, how dare you write this? You need to and you probably need to sleep on it.
And I think when we're telling the team and getting their buy-in, it's like, hey guys, we're going to have you go through this process where we're going to have you answer some questions. It's going to be formatted and ready to roll. We're then going to take it under advisement. We're going to schedule one-on-ones with each one of you to review the individual feedback if needed. And we're going to take everything in aggregate and try to decide what's the best course of action for the next year for the agency.
Right. And we need to make sure that we realize that we are in this alone, that we may be the owners and this is our strategic plan to get there, but we need our staff to help us get there too. So we need to take in their feedback and their role. Read the responses twice. The first time you will see all the challenges and the second time you will see all the good stuff. So read them twice. Take notes. As you build your plan, you can refer back to your notes from the feedback. And again, their perception is their version of reality. So this is just a starting point. Now, Stephen and I are going to flip over to the PDFs that you are going to send to your staff for them to fill out so we can review that with you.
So this is the guide here. If you can see my screen, this is the team feedback workbook you would be giving your team. I recommend you take some time, block a couple hours on your calendar to really go through it and be familiar with it yourself before you even tell the team about it, right? You need to be prepared. You need to highlight where they may struggle or where they need some clarification while you're telling the team. And I think it's a great time to have a team meeting about it and then release it to the wild and let them complete it. But what the first part is really like filling in your name, that's pretty basic. And then looking back over the last year or over the last, whatever the timeline we're looking at is, what's one word that describes your best year? What accomplishment were you most proud of in the last year? What's worked well? What are you grateful for? This is all positive stuff. What marketing went really well this year? And what do you love about the past year, right? All of the feelings, all of the positives about what happened in the last year. We then go back to looking back a little bit more. What did you hate the most about the year? And again, we want them to be honest, right? They might hate it, but it might not be an option for them not to do it. Or it could have been a horrible situation that happened, or we might not have even realized something happened. So we really want them to be open and honest. What opportunities did we miss? What relationships need to be improved upon? What didn't work so well? What sucks our energy? And what have you learned this year, right? What's something that you've learned over the year? And people will interpret these in any way that they want to, and that's okay. But I see a lot of times when we are doing this with teams or talking with this through teams is like, you'll have the one person that's like 5 or 6 words for every answer. Like every answer is just short and to the point. Then you have the person like, the spaces weren't big enough and it took me 17 hours to complete. Because they're going to type like paragraph after paragraph for each question. So I think we want to let our team know that we're looking for feedback, right? But they don't need to write a novel about each thing. If there's something that they think that we really need to talk more about, they can put a note that we should probably talk more about that.
I also think sometimes we need to have examples. So I did have somebody do this recently and ask me, what's an example of this? There's one question, and I'm not even sure if that question's in there, but the question was, what bothers my boss?
It is a page in here.
And sometimes that's very difficult for someone else to think through. And I'm like, and so I think of it as, what is my boss's pet peeves? That's how I think of it. So be prepared that if they do ask you, that you have an example of what an answer could be for that. So you give them an idea and you help them answer those.
We then go into the SWOT, which this is a foreign concept to a lot of our team. If they haven't been in business or they don't really understand why, this could take a little bit of explaining. So maybe spend a couple of minutes explaining what the SWOT theory is, or the SWOT method of listing some of your strengths and weaknesses. What are some opportunities that are available, and what are some threats that might make it not happen? And just keep it simple, right? Like, what are 2 or 3 strengths, 2 or 3 weaknesses, 2 or 3 opportunities, and 2 or 3 threats? We're not looking for, again, 100 items in every line. We're trying to get a feel for where each member of the team is. It also is a section to list things that bother me. And just because there's 6 boxes doesn't mean we need to come up with 6, but we want a good 3 to 4, right? What are some things that bother me? And it could be like, I hate that we have tacos on Tuesday. I wish we had pizzas on Wednesdays instead. That would be a great problem to have, right? The team is upset that they get free food. Or it could be like, it really bothers me when so-and-so talks really loud on speakerphone next to me, right? We're going to get a whole range of answers, and we're just going to take it with a grain of salt and move forward with it. But it's at least giving us an idea of the culture of the agency. This is the one Therese was talking about, things that bother my leader. And this is a great question. And I would say, guys, we're really looking for you to be open and honest, because when I was running a large agency, I didn't realize that people felt that they shouldn't bother me because I was always so busy, quote unquote, right? And I was like, guys, I'm always available for you. I want your feedback. I want you to talk to me. And they're like, well, your calendar's always so full. And I'm like, well, I have a lot of meetings and I have a lot of time blocks and I have a lot of things. And so I really had to look at my calendar, and I went through and hit a bunch of stuff that was like my personal planning or personal blocks for things. So the team couldn't see it. Like, I could still see it, but when they looked at my calendar, they couldn't. And then they were like, oh, you don't have as many meetings anymore. I'm like, I still have lots to do. I'm running a large agency, but all y'all's feedback was I didn't have enough time, right? I was always so busy and you didn't want to bother me. So I had to look internally and fix that. Or like the team's like, you hate it when I ask you the same question twice. I'm like, very true. Thank you. Right. But that was part of our training methodology was, I'll tell you what, I'm going to show you where to find the resource. I'm going to put it in writing normally, or make sure you know where it's at. The second time, I'm not going to be quite as nice about it. And the third time, I'm going to be like, look, you've had 2 other chances. Go figure it out. Spend 10 minutes, spend 20 minutes. Let me know when you still can't find it. And tell me why all the other times we talked about it, you didn't write it down, right? But some of them were valid and some of them were dumb. Like, in my opinion, not that any opinion's dumb, but there was things that were higher priority and lower priority. So just let them know to be honest and open. What do I want to get out of my job and insurance career? Ooh, why is this one important, Therese?
Well, I think we all need to have goals that we're aspiring to. I've been in several agencies that don't basically talk about goals and don't have goals for people. And I think it kind of leaves us open and out in the wind to not have a target of where we're headed. So I think what I want out of my job and my insurance career, you should want something out of it because you're at your job so many hours a day. So they should be striving for something and should have something that they're headed towards. Like, they want to be in management, or they want to be this top sales producer, or they want to be this best service agent they can be. If they do service and sales, they want to balance their service and sales. Usually in these cases, when you are service and sales, you do more service than you do sales because service tends to be easier because service people don't say no, they're calling you. Sales, when you're doing sales, they can say no. So, trying to find something that excites them, something that inspires them, something that they want to work towards. Because I feel like if they don't have that, it's just like, it's just a career. I'm just sitting here and I'm just getting a paycheck. And I think we need to make our insurance careers to be something more than just earning a paycheck. And it could be something, totally simple. There could be something that they're aspiring to be in the insurance, a marketing person or somebody who goes out and networks. If they don't do that right now, there could be hidden stuff that you don't know about as well.
I was at a smaller agency the other day and I was like, hey, what is it you really want out of your job and your career? And they're like, I would have provided great living for my family. right? Like I want to make it so my spouse doesn't have to work, or we can afford extra tutoring, or I mean, they all had a list of reasons of why they wanted to provide a better life or a better situation for their family. And I was like, well, tell me more about that. And so we really got into why it was important to them. And that's kind of what we want to know, what their goals are so we can help them get there. And we don't have to get super personal and like intimate about it, but we need to know what the motivator is behind it. So then when I was meeting with the leader of the agency, I was like, hey, like your team is hungry. They want to grow. They want all these things. He's like, well, they don't sell anything. Like I keep telling them, the more they sell, the more they make. And yet every day I'm like, what'd you sell? What'd you sell? What'd you sell? Or they'll send me something and be like, can you quote this? Can you quote this and close this? When they are capable of doing it. Well, maybe we need to make it just a little more clear, like in their job description, right? So we restructured some of their job descriptions and said, this is our expectation. Like X amount of type of calls a day, X amount per week, X amount per month. And I'm like, that way we can hold them accountable to the job description. But at the end of the day, they're going to get what they want out of their job. They're going to be able to make that extra money. But we have to tell them the steps they have to take. And as a leader, he was like, well, I shouldn't have to motivate them to make more money. If they want more money, they should do it. And I'm like, well, that's what they're telling you. But on the back end, we can see they don't know how to get there, right? So in part of the planning, that's where these questions come important. Just like, what does my leader want? Like every single one of them said, the owner wants us to have a great life. He wants us to have fun. And he wants us to make a lot of money. But they didn't know how to get there, right? They were like, he says he wants us to make a lot of money, but we don't. So it's kind of reading between the lines sometimes of let's come up with a plan to make this happen.
And as a leader, we need to be mentors. We need to move people forward. We need to motivate people. We're motivators. Leaders have to guide and motivate and get people excited about something. Sometimes they're just not excited, and you have to find ways to make people get excited. Winning, incentives, Jean Day or, lunch. My boss used to buy us Olive Garden. Had this great thing you could pick up the soup, the salad, and we loved Olive Garden. So, we would get our goals just to get Olive Garden on Fridays. You want to be a motivator, a mentor, and you want to kind of guide your staff into goals and hitting different milestones that will be great for their career and their life.
And in a lot of agencies, this is the first time we're going to be talking about these things. So it might be a little rough and messy the first year, even too. But some conversation's better than no conversation at all.
Absolutely.
We then move into the specific role of the person, like low and blah, don't want to do it again, versus love it, give me more. I hate administrative tasks, but they're a necessary evil to get to where we need to be.
Right.
My perfect world, there would be somebody that just followed me around and took care of anything administrative. Okay. And I would just deal with clients and solve problems all day. But that's what we have to define in here, right? Is like, for your specific role, what are some things you wish you never had to do again versus what do you love? And when we start looking at this with open eyes and not taking it, as that they won't do it, but we can be like, oh, shut up. Sharon loves cold calling, where Tommy loves, dealing with difficult building situations. And that's both on the other one's hate list, right? Can we kind of realign some things and let them each follow their passion to get the end result? Also, having them identify what are they proud of? What are the top metrics or things that they're proud of versus what are they disappointed in, right? I love sales. Sales is amazing. But for a month, it's been great. And then I oopsie doodle, right? Like maybe we didn't make all of our calls or something to get logged in, or it was just a slow sales month and maybe they're disappointed in it. So lots of different things to think of there. How do you feel about the metrics you see about the agency? And I can guarantee most of them will be like, what metrics?
Yeah.
Because we're not always great about sharing where the agency's at or what the goals of the agency are. And for the first year, like, again, don't take offense to what you're seeing. We just need to address some of these things as our planning to make it make it better for the agency. Another agency I was working at, I was like, hey guys, like, so how do you think the agency is doing? They're like, well, we saw some numbers in January, but it's now, September, and we don't know where we're at with the goal. I'm like, so you talked about it in January. They're like, yeah, but we haven't had any updates since. So I think it's going okay.
Well, and it is important for them to understand that their role as an individual affects the role of the agency as a whole. I think when we're talking about remarketing policies, I don't think staff members realize if their paychecks were to depend on those remarkets, I think they would rethink them, because when you remarket a policy, you're actually reducing the income of the agency. So you're actually reducing your paycheck if you were to look at it that way. So I think we need to make them realize and make them feel, and that's what this feedback does. It makes them feel like part of the team. It makes them realize that their goals and their aspirations actually help build the agency and the agency's goals and aspirations.
We then give them a spot to talk about random thoughts from the past year. That's kind of the wild card. And then top 3 areas for the agency to improve. And they might all be on the same page, or they might all have different things they want to say. Again, we can't make smart business plans if we don't get feedback from the team. And we have to know that, again, depending on where each person's coming from, you might look at it and be like, that is number 100 on a list of 1 to 100 of the most important things, right? But to them, if they're telling you about it, it must be important to them.
Well, and if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I don't understand this question. What do you mean the top 3 areas for the agency to improve? Don't give them the answer, because this is where they feel like the agency needs to improve. And you may think that the communication in the agency is great, but they may think the communication in the agency is not. So remember, when they ask you questions about certain questions in here, you do want to kind of force them to think on their own, and that you want their opinion on what areas there are for improvement.
We then move on, if my mouse will scroll. What does success look like this year? What should we do if we hit it, right? Like, let them tell you what they think success looks like for the next year. And then what are some rewards that they're interested in, right? Like, I'm like, let's go to Disneyland. And some people are like, Disneyland sucks. And again, different people on the team can have different ideas, but if we're figuring out what's important to them or what their idea of success looks like and what a great reward is, we can tailor some of the things we're doing or look at the bigger picture, right?
And if you've never done this before, it's going to be weird. It's going to be awkward, but it also is going to make your team realize that they are part of this. They're part of the agency. You're bringing them in. You want their feedback, and you want to know, what does success look like to them? What do they want if we hit that goal? What would inspire them? And, if the agency is like, hey, yeah, let's go to Disney World. I mean, and the people who really want to go to Disney World, holy moly, that's going to be super exciting to them. Now, I did have one boss once that he would win all these trips with a certain carrier, we won't say any names, and he would promise his staff that they would get to go with him on these trips. And come to find out, the trips were only for agents, for primary agents. And the staff could never even go on the trips. And we'd actually win these trips for him because we'd get so excited. But by the time the trip came, we didn't know when it was. And he would just go off on the trip, and we're in the, so don't do that. Don't do that. If you promise them something, you've got to come through.
We do. Yes, we have to keep our promises. I think it's also great to ask, what resources do we need? Right? Yeah. It's a very generic question. It could be equipment, it could be training, it could be just about anything. We're going to let them give us feedback. I was at an agency one day and they were doing a bunch of marketing training, which I thought was hilarious. Not hilarious that they were doing the training, but hilarious that when I'm doing interviews, I'm like, why is everybody talking about TikTok right now? And the owner's like, oh my God, because they're doing this marketing thing and they keep coming to me telling me we need a TikTok. I'm like, so you're doing a TikTok? He goes, what insurance do you sell from TikTok? And what are we going to make consistently to create a channel? I'm like, valid point, my friend. Valid point, right?
Hey,
so the whole team thought they needed a TikTok.
If that's what makes them excited.
Well, but then when we question, we're like, cool, so what does that look like? How are you consistently going to post multiple times a week with new content? They were like, oh, right. So we were like, great, that's a great idea, but now let's talk about it as a team.
Yeah.
What fears do you come up with when you think about your goals? We're going to let them tell us what they're afraid of about their goals. What's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? And I think that this is an important way for them to kind of self-reflect. I know that if they set a goal, there could be some trouble, but what's the best thing that could happen as well? And is it worth it to go all in? Should I just jump in with both feet? And what does that look like? The next question, and this one, again, is open for interpretation as well, is what makes us different? what makes us not individually different, but like what makes our agency different? What makes us different? And they're going to say service. We provide great service. They're going to have some
Well,
ideas.
we're local,
Yeah.
stuff like we're local, or, we provide, we do donations to certain charitable causes. You want unique stuff that makes your agency special.
And you can use that then to make sure the agency is still going in the correct direction. What kind of clients do we want? We're allowing them to kind of identify who their preferred or target client is. And how do we sell the best? Then it gives them a spot for brainstorming and putting any ideas down that they might have or things that they want to discuss further. And then what are the most important ideas, right? So they can come up with all these great ideas, but then what are the top 4? What are the top 4 ideas that you've come up with? Is which are going to be easiest and which are going to be hard, which are going to take time, and which ones can you do quickly, right? So it's kind of defining, is it easy or hard? Does it take time or can it be done quickly? So those 4 things we break down into the quadrants here. And then what do you want your goals to be? Like, what do you want your goal to be for the next year? And we let them give us some feedback about what they think that their goals should be. And that's going to help us kind of see as well where they're at and what their aspirations are.
For sure.
We then scroll. What knowledge gaps do we have? We're going to ask them for where do we need to be stronger? What are some knowledge gaps we have?
And that could be carriers, like gaps in knowledge with carriers. And one of your agents may know more about a carrier than others. So then you would just cross-educate and have them work with them.
Well, I think it also helps us set up like a training plan for the year with the team as well. Like if the whole team is struggling with product knowledge, great. Then we need to either schedule more time with carriers, underwriters, marketing reps, or just really digging into the website and getting the information.
Absolutely.
Also research some ways that we could close some of those knowledge gaps. Let them tell you what they think a good solution is. I love somebody who can come up with problems, but I also want to know what they think a good solution is, right?
Yes, for sure.
And then we get into, I am most productive when. They get to tell us when they're the most productive, how they're most productive. Is it the one day a week they get to work from home? If they think they're the most productive because there's not all the office chatter, that's great. They can tell us about it. Or I'm great from 9 to 10 in the morning. Like that's my most productive time of day. We leave this one open for them as well, just kind of by most productive when, either time, environment, or other. And what indisputable rules we want to put in place, rules for working with each other, types of clients, etc. Identifying the clear boundaries so we can respect them, right? What do you think some rules we should put in place are?
I think bringing unnecessary drama into the agency. Sometimes when they get on the phone with a client and they have a bad experience with a client, they'll go gossip around the entire agency. One of my previous boss, he called it barn talking. So the receptionist sat out front. We had our offices down the hallway, and she would yell down the hallway, "Hey, Shanae, you've got a call on line 4. And my boss that would drive him crazy. So, we had the phone system. And that's not really a good example. That's just something that bothered him. But I think we need to find those things that are just non-negotiable. It's a rule. We don't want to do it. So talking bad about a client after you get off the phone with them would be a good example of one, because you don't want to put everybody in the entire office in a bad mood. And then when the phone rings, if it's that client, they don't want to answer the phone. Or if the phone rings, they're thinking every client that day is going to be that same way. Just rules that are non-negotiable that we don't want to break, that we want to make sure that we're respecting everybody equally.
I concur. When you start to get off track or down in the dumps, what symptoms do you display? We're going to let them tell us how we can tell when they're having some challenges, right? Yeah. And how can we support you when you're down? If you tell me to put a smile on my face when I'm having a bad day, that's probably not going to go well, right? I'm the happiest, nicest person until I'm in a horrible mood, right? You just got to be like, cool, I know you're having a day. We're going to let you be for an hour. Right?
For sure. Yep.
It's kind of like when you tell your spouse to calm down. Does that ever go well?
Oh, it never goes well.
It knows when you're like, take a breath, calm down.
That's funny that you mentioned that because yesterday he snipped at me about something and he said something and I was like, hey, remember who you're talking to. I'm not your coworker. I'm your wife. You actually live with me. You have to deal with me the rest of your life. So can we not have this conversation? Can you not speak to me in that tone? I'm speaking to you with any tone. And then he comes back later and he's like, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have talked to you that way. So yeah, in those moments, maybe I could have done better that when he snapped at me that way, I just let him turn around and walk away. And then maybe later on, go to him and say, hey, I really appreciate that instead of doing it at the moment. I don't like to be called out in the moment. But so here we are at page 20. That's it. So see, we went through the questions pretty quickly. They weren't too bad.
No.
You know, we definitely need to make sure that our staff put a lot of thought into it. But we also want our strategic plan to include the steps we're going to take in the feedback that we have with our staff. So with this strategic plan, you've already gone through, kind of figured out what your plan is. So now we're just going to set up a plan for how are we going to gather the team's feedback. So we're first going to tell the team, then we're going to receive feedback, we're going to review the feedback, and then we're going to analyze it. Now, when you get the feedback, I'm going to tell you right now, do not freak out.
Take a deep breath.
Share it. Do not just kind of, you have to slow down to speed up, and you have to kind of take that information in. So that's just a warning, just in case you've gotten some feedback, be careful with that.
I also like to say that if you're a drinking person, you might have a drink and then review them. And then the next day, don't have a drink and review them again, right? Don't make any quick reaction. Take a deep breath. Know that if they're being honest, that's a huge key. And you may not love or understand what you're reading at first. So you might have to read it again with a clearer head.
Yes. So what we're going to do first is we're first going to obtain their feedback. And how are we going to do this? So like Stephen says, you have blind spots in how you see things. You want to kind of get their perspective on it. You want to earn their buy-in into your plan. And to do that, you're going to kind of need their feedback to make sure that you've got their perception as well, because their perception is critical because they're in the agency working it all day long. So remember, their perception is their version of reality. And your perception is your version of reality. So we just want to make sure that we've got those two perspectives. So what we want you to do is download the fillable PDF that we will be going over shortly. You need to download it and you need to get it to your team. You want to schedule a time to review this with your team so there are very clear expectations. And we'll go over that soon. You want to give them a few days to complete it because you want their best feedback. You don't want them to rush through it. You want to give them some time to think through those questions. And to be honest with you, we do these at APP. I just recently had to do one. Stephen's going to have to do one soon. And I did mine. And then I went to sleep that night. And then I woke up the next morning. I'm like, oh, did I put that on there? So it's good to let them sleep on it as well, because they may come up with more stuff to add to the form later. But you have to make sure you give a deadline. A deadline is very important because you want to make sure that you get it done so you can review it as well. And we know how deadlines are. If you just say, oh, just take your time, they're not going to do it because they realize that it must not be important to you because you don't put a due date on it. So you want to definitely have a due date on it. Then you want to basically roll out the PDF to your team. You hold your meeting. You let the team know what you are working on. They need to know that you're working on your strategic plan for 2024. You want to make sure you're asking for honest feedback. You want to assure them that you want to hear it all. This is the hard one because you have to be careful Stephen, what happens when you say, I want to hear it all? What happens?
I think that we have to be prepared to not be reactive. Like we literally just have to take that deep breath and be like, you know what? I'm going to get what I'm going to get. Right. And then we need to look at it through a couple sets of eyes, like not saying share it with everybody, but like you need to read it, you need to absorb it, you need to read it again, right? And you have to understand that each person on the team is coming from a different place. So anywhere from the, a virtual assistant that their role is kind of defined and it's over, kind of the same thing, all of the person has to be the most creative one in the world. You're going to get a whole variety of responses. You just need to be able to take a deep breath and be like, you know what? Thank you for the feedback. I'm going to take a look at this and think on it.
And you want their honest feedback, because if they're not being honest and they're just telling you what you want to hear, you're not going to get what you need to make those changes.
And this was one of the most challenging things that I had to go through when I was leading a large team, because some people I'd be like, awesome. Yeah, you're right on. Like, I agree. Your performance is this. You agree. Like, you know where you're at. Like, you know what your strengths and weaknesses are. And other people would be like, I'm amazing at sales. And I'm like, you literally sold 2 policies in 12 months. And they're like, but I'm amazing. And I love this. And I'm like, that's your reality, right? But I couldn't be like, no, you're horrible. Yeah. I'd be like, well, that's what I think their biggest strength is. How do we build on that to really make that true?
Anything else, Stephen?
No, again, I think we just need to take it. We need to absorb it. We can't react immediately. Like, we can't get super emotional or, go after somebody because they were honest with us. And I think sometimes it's difficult to hear that maybe we're not as amazing as we thought we were, or it's really exciting to hear we're a lot better than we thought we were, right? You never know what you're going to get until you get it. But we just need to be calm, cool, and collected when we're taking this. And we want to just take the information to help us make the agency a better place.
Awesome. So we wish you luck on your strategic planning. We wish you luck on the feedback, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
All right. If that doesn't make you want to run out and go ask your team all their feedback, I don't know what will. But the important thing is that you have to clear out their obstacles and boundaries in order to get ahead. And that's one of the things that the strategic planning workbook will do. When you have your whole team rowing in the same direction, clarity, remember, clarity is kind, then you can get farther ahead faster. So don't miss out on getting your 2024 plan together, and let us help you with our new workbook. It's $495 from up until 10/31/23, and then it goes to $995, and that will be our opportunity. If not, you will have to pay a little bit more for that workbook. So get going, get your planning on, and we'll see you in our next podcast.